feeling it like.
Hey everybody, Michael here. Welcome back to another video. This video is just really an opinion video while we wait for the October event and we hear from anything else. But I want to kind of take this video because this is just a video that I just wanted to personally make out. This is a personal video. This isn't an issue or anything. I don't expect people to really watch this video, but if there are people watching this, please let me know what you think down below because this is just something I wanted to talk about. So, if you guys don't know, I'm a big fan of Apple, but I have to admit, I'm most likely going to switch to Android next year, but I'm not leaving the Apple ecosystem. I'll still have everything else. But tonight I was thinking about something. If I'm going to give up my iPhone for an Android phone, I will be losing ultimately, you know, the iOS. I mean, I can still use my iPad and stuff, but I thought about it and I said, the iPad is big and it's also, you know, not like a remote control like an iPhone can be. I mean, you can still use your Android to control things, but ultimately I came down to the thought and I was saying to myself, you know, it's really hard giving up your iPhone, but then I thought of another product that I used so much in the past that I could still pick up today and it will work just as fine. I'm of course talking about the iPod Touch. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm gonna just say right now, when I was a kid growing up, my first ever Apple product was the second generation or third generation iPod Touch. I'm gonna pull it up right here. I have photos of it, the third generation. I literally used to use it like crazy. That was the iPod I grew up with as a kid. When I was a kid growing up, I had the third generation iPod Touch. And then when I got a year later, we had the fourth generation come out. That was when everything changed. I remember Christmas morning, I had the fourth generation iPod Touch. The third one I had given away because the third one obviously broke. I've already said stories about it. Well, actually, I never did, but I'll make separate videos. But I remember the iPod Touch, waking up that Christmas morning, unboxing it for the first time, and getting an Apple product in my hand. That was the best feeling in the world. My second Apple product would be the iPad, which I still have and it still works. I'll use it in one of these videos. So I thought to myself, I could just get an iPod and use that as like an iPhone, because iPod ultimately is an iPhone without cellular, and it's for a cheaper price. But that's not what I'm talking about this video. Here's the problem. You see, the iPod Touch has been in discussion recently with a lot of YouTubers saying that Apple should get rid of the iPod Touch. That it's not an important product. It's... Hold on, there's a freaking bug on my stupid screen. Sorry. That it's really just not... It shouldn't be used anymore, and that they should just discontinue the iPod Touch. So I'm going to talk about whether or not the iPod Touch should be continued or discontinued. Now, first off, I'm going to say, I was a big fan of the iPod Touch. That got me on the path to Apple. Some of my oldest products are iPod. And literally, right here, I have the iPod Shuffle. The Shuffle. I don't know how old this is, but it still works. And I even have the iPod Nano. This little guy right here, I used in my freshman year of high school. Obviously, I don't use it anymore. I only used it because my phone broke and I needed a music player, so I used this. And besides, Apple Music was relatively new at the time. But the thing is, you could see, these are some old devices, but they hold up so well. And that's what I'm saying about the iPod. The name iPod. Like, iPod was one of Apple's biggest one of their biggest products, and everybody had it. From middle school all the way to the end of middle school. I remember before everybody had iPhones at the age of 13, because you thought 13 you were entitled to have a cell phone. Before any of that, before any of the discussion, everybody had an iPod Touch. It wasn't until the iPhone 4 and the 4S came out that everybody started slowly getting a phone. I was one of the few middle schoolers that had an iPod when the thing was new and everybody was using it. When the iPhone came out, kids slowly started to get phones. And we were like, these are young, but we understood why everybody was getting them. Then, finally, when the iPhone 5 came out, everyone pretty much gave up on the iPod Touch, and that just faded away. But the point is, iPod was the biggest thing. When the iPhone got bigger and bigger and bigger, that's when the transition went out. Now, I can understand the arguments why people would want to get rid of the iPod Touch. For starters, the specs are really outdated. If you look at the specs right here, and I'm pulling up the webpage, it has an A8 chip. A8's literally so 40 years old. That's one. Number two, the display it's a 4-inch display. It's not big enough for people to use. I mean, it's pretty decent size, but the thing is, people are more accustomed to the 5-6-inch screen, so holding an iPod Touch is really relatively small. That's number two. And number three, it literally, the stuff you do in there can be done with an iPhone. So there's no reason to get an iPod Touch. But on the other hand, an iPod Touch, for me, I can see kids using this. You know, you don't want them to get an iPhone, but you want them to have something where you can keep in touch with them. And since it works over Wi-Fi, you know, kids are smart enough. They just connect to Wi-Fi, boom. And although the iPod doesn't do text messages, it does iMessage, and it has FaceTime. So you're really not losing out much. So, and also, another thing, it doesn't have Touch ID. It's just, you know, swipe to unlock or a passcode. So yeah, they haven't updated this thing in so long. So I can understand why people would want to, you know, not have an iPod Touch, and I can understand that. But to me, I mean, the iPod Touch is so legendary to Apple that if they throw it away, it's going to be really, really heartbreaking. Like, personally, I'm going out and buying it. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I love the iPod Touch, and if I'm getting rid of my phone, at least that's a good compromise, because since it works with iOS 12, and probably that'll be the only update it'll support before they get rid of it, but I mean, iOS 12 is relatively new, and my Apple TV and everything is working fine, so if that thing does what my iPhone does, I don't have to worry about giving up anything. And besides, I have an iPad, a MacBook, so I won't lose messages or FaceTime or anything like that. I mean, obviously texting and stuff, but in general speaking, I don't use FaceTime on my, you know, my phone. I usually just do calls or texts, social media, everything like that. My iPhone is pretty much, I mean, obviously Apple Music, but now that Apple Music is on Android platform, I'm not losing out much, and my HomePods, obviously, I can still control with any of these devices. So I'm not really losing much by switching to a phone. But the point I'm trying to make is the iPhone can do what the iPod does, but the iPod does some things that I think that the iPhone doesn't do, like necessarily, meaning it literally just keeps kids into Apple. It gets children into Apple's little ecosystem. So even though it would break my heart that they have to discontinue it, and I understand the reasons why they would probably want to, I really don't see a reason why they should discontinue it. If they give it one final refresh, if they give it a bump up in the processor, maybe A9 or A10, just a little more, maybe upgrade the camera quality. Well, I mean, again, you could probably argue no kid will need a big camera, but 8 megapixels, give it a 9 megapixels camera. But honestly, I can understand why people would probably not use it, but I personally would use it. And hey, if it's a home product, I just use it to control my stuff and boom, I'm done. That's really how I feel. So that's really all I have to say on the iPhone, iPod Touch. Should Apple discontinue it? Personally, I don't think they should. I think that they should start marketing it, get a refresh, maybe get kids into the Apple ecosystem, like I'm saying. Market this for a Christmas thing for kids, and let it be for fun, and keep it at that price range. $199 for an iPod Touch, that's really a good price, so I don't really see any problem with it at all. So that's just my take on it. Obviously, I know people are going to disagree, and I'm really open to hear why you guys would or wouldn't want it to be discontinued. So let me know your comments down below. Just playing with these because I missed. You could literally just clip it on and boom. And also, that's going to do it. So thanks for listening, watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know, what do you think? Do you think the iPod Touch should be getting rid of? I'm just interested. So thanks for listening, watching. God damn it. Thanks for everything, guys. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and peace.
No, I can't be responsible. It ain't my fault.